美国1月18日星期六，时隔4年，当选总统唐纳川普和他的夫人梅兰妮亚以及小儿子巴伦，终于再度登上了空军1号，从佛罗里达州棕榈滩出发，前往华盛顿特区为他的第2次就职典礼做准备。至于川普的其他亲朋好友，他们则乘坐川普1号飞机前往华盛顿特区参加就职典礼。根据最新消息，川普一家3口目前已经抵达了维吉尼亚州的杜勒斯国际机场，随后便前往了川普位于维吉尼亚州斯特林的高尔夫俱乐部举行招待会和晚宴。与此同时，阿根廷总统米莱也在当天抵达了美国，随行的还有他的核心小组，包括他的妹妹总统秘书长卡里娜米莱、阿根廷经济部长及年度财政部长路易斯托托卡普托，他们将于2天后参加川普的就职典礼。此外，令人惊讶的是，川普的前副手麦克彭斯也将出席川普的就职典礼。而就在川普及其盟友如火如荼地准备就职典礼的同时，搬家工人就已经进入白宫搬运家具了。据悉，他们是在为拜登的搬走和川普的搬入做过渡工作。视线转向卡马拉·哈里斯，临走之前，他还不忘创造历史，在副总统办公室的桌子抽屉上签名，成为了美国有史以来第1位这样做的女性。
All right.
此外，就在刚刚，财政部长珍妮特·耶伦也离开了他的办公室，告别了这个他工作了4年的岗位。接下来，再让我们来欣赏一下左派们的歇斯底里。当天 CNN 前主持人 Don Lemon 声称，唐纳川普是由于担心观众太少，所以才把就职典礼移至室内举行。
So I'm not sure it's the cold. I think maybe it's that you're afraid of the crowd sizes and that hotels are still available and that a lot of people, as many people as, showed up for, Barack Obama or Joe Biden or whatever, won't be showing up for your inauguration. I think it's the crowd sizes. That number is more important than the temperature number.
此外，左派人士还试图破坏川普的游行路线。抗议者在川普就职游行路线沿途的公共设施上涂鸦，张贴标语"回家吧，法西斯"和"吃掉富人"。这些标语现在在华盛顿特区的街道上随处可见。更有甚者，数千名抗议者聚焦于堕胎权和公民自由，打着性别正义、移民权利和民主的旗号，向林肯纪念堂进发，反对川普的就职典礼。自由派们在华盛顿特区游行示威，高喊唐纳川普和伊隆马斯克必须走。
It's not. I'm not a single issue person. There's a whole bunch of very worrisome things with the Trump administration. Obviously, it's a very if you look at the academics, it is bordering upon fascism. So that is very concerning, as an American. But obviously, another issue for me is Gaza and Palestine.
其中还有一名装扮成女性的男子，用非常男性化的声音对人群尖叫，呼吁进行大规模堕胎和变性手术。
We will not yield. We will unapologetically disobey, unapologetically fight for the rights of all LGBTQ people. We will unapologetically fight for the right to trans affirm.
而在社交媒体上，还有一名左派网红发影片贬低川普的支持者，都是一群又老又蠢的人。
I have secondhand embarrassment for these Trump supporters in D.C. They look so out of place, they look fearful, and frankly, they look old and dumb.
不过，最值得关注的还是一位戴着 MAGA 小红帽子的年轻黑人男子。华盛顿特区的一群极左抗议者围住了这名男子，并不断推搡他。但面对数千名极左分子，这位年轻的黑人男子并没有害怕。他直言 MAGA 并不害怕紫发的自由派，这些人应该去好好找份工作。
Respect all black people. Come on, man. We don't have no fear.
另外，值得注意的是，当天在一段采访影片中，众议院议长约翰逊还爆了一个猛料。他透露称，拜登在签署行政命令时并不清楚自己签署的内容，甚至不记得自己签过什么。约翰逊提到，有一次他有机会与拜登总统会面，但当他到达时，他却被卡马拉·哈里斯、扎克·舒默和哈基姆·杰弗里斯伏击了。拜登显然不知道发生了什么，他要求其他人离开，以便与约翰逊私下会谈。约翰逊借机询问拜登为何暂停对欧洲的液化天然气出口，拜登却表示他完全不知道自己已经这么做。那一刻，约翰逊突然意识到他并没有对我撒谎，他真的不知道自己签署了什么。我走出那次会议时，心中充满恐惧，因为我想我们真的有大麻烦了。在采访中，约翰逊甚至坦言，美国已经4年没有总统了。
Speaker of the House should be able to talk to the president, especially in times of great national interest and calamity. But they wouldn't let me meet with him, and his staff kept giving me excuses. This went on for like 8 or 9 weeks. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, he doesn't have time. What are you talking about? I'm second in line of the presidency. He has time. I need to talk to him. We had, I can't say the classified parts, but we had some big national concerns at the time that I was losing sleep over. Finally, I just went to the Hill press corps and I said, the president is not being allowed to meet with the speaker. There's a problem. So they started putting pressure on him. Long story short, they finally relented. They invited me to the White House. I show up and I realize it's actually an ambush because it's not just me and the president. It's also Kamala Harris, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem, you know, the CIA director, everybody. And then, so I walked in the Oval and, I know what this is. They're going to hotbox the speaker on Ukraine funding. That's what it was. This is probably third week of January. We sit down, we're in the midst of it, and the whole conversation, and I'm going, we don't need to have this conversation. The president reaches over just like this. We're sitting right next to the fireplace in the Oval, and he grabs my arm and he says, the speaker and I just need a couple minutes together. Would y'all just leave us alone? And I looked up on the faces of some of the staff standing around the wall, and they're like, oh, no, he did it. So he called it. He's the commander-in-chief. So everybody leaves, and he and I are standing awkwardly in the middle of the Oval Office right over the rug by that coffee table. And I said, Mr. President, thanks for the moments. This is very important. I got some big national security things I need to talk to you about that I've heard and I think you know, and what do we do? But first, real quickly, Mr. President, can I ask you a question? I cannot answer this from my constituents in Louisiana. Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, And he looks at me, stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order, 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing with me. I said, Mr. President, respectfully, could I go out here and ask your secretary to print it out? We'll read it together. You definitely did that. And he goes, oh, you talk about natural gas. Yes, sir. He said, no, you misunderstand. He said, what I did is I signed this thing we're gonna conduct a study on the effects of LNG. I said, no, you're not, sir. You paused it. I know. I have the export terminals in my state. I talked to those people this morning. This is doing massive damage to our economy, national security. It occurred to me, Barry, he was not lying to me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed. And I walked out of that meeting with fear and loathing because I thought, we're in serious trouble. Who is running the country? I don't know who put the paper in front of him, but he didn't know.
好，再来关注野火灾后的加州。名人房地产经纪人乔什·阿特曼坦言，他接到来自洛杉矶太平洋帕利赛德火灾受害者的电话，其中50%的人都不打算回去了，许多人正在离开加州，他们对政府感到厌倦，决定离开。加门纽森毁了加州。
What's the vibe like? Obviously, you've said you've had friends that have lost homes in the Palisades. What's the vibe like? Do they want to move back to the Palisades? Are they considering moving elsewhere? Do they?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Look, this is hard to say. I strongly believe that 50% of the people who lived in the Palisades are not going to be moving back to the Palisades.
Why?
Yeah, and honestly, that number wasn't as big last week in my mind, but after the phone calls that I've been getting, people who are moving to Brentwood, Santa Monica, Bel Air, Beverly Hills, those are going to be the markets that are going to go up because people want to be as close to normalcy as possible.
Yeah.
And those are those towns right around the Palisades. Palisades. Those are going to go up, that market. That's where they're going to move. It's going to be too long. You got to realize Palisades is the all-American town, right? The families are running around. It's like what you picture towns in movies that we used to watch. These kids that are 5 years old right now that live in the Palisades and go to school, there's a chance that if things don't move fast, it could be 4 to 5 years before they're back there. These kids are now 10. They're going to different schools, different lives now, you know, so it's tough because picture you living on a street, you're the first house finished, and every other house on the street is in construction. Think about that. You don't want to do that. You want to wake up every single morning and be reminded of that?
Right, it's traumatic.
I'm negotiating almost a dozen deals right now on land in the Palisades, much faster than I ever thought I would be doing. People are already trying to sell their dirt, knowing that they're not going to go back there, to home builders that will then build their house and either keep it or sell it.
So because obviously some people with the Woolsey fire, this could be their second time rebuilding with Malibu and stuff like that.
It's disheartening.
Who's going to move to the Palisades, or are we going to see that city kind of
The calls
end?
that I've got have been across the board of, I'm 70 years old, I just evacuated for my last time, I'm out. I'm never going back.
Where are they going?
Okay, that was the Palisades. So they're either going locally, or because of, you know, they're fed up with the regulations and government, they're out. California, and if they're not and they're out of LA, they're going down to Newport Beach.
Oh,
yeah, I'm getting a huge amount of calls from people who want to move down to Orange County.
Really?
Yeah. Majority of the people, unfortunately, because I've been on the phone with my insurance agent for hours every day. Majority of the people were heavily uninsured. And that's an issue. And that's why they're not going to go back to the Palisades. Because in order to recreate the house that they lived in, their dream house, they're not going to be able to afford it. And that's just the horrible thing.
与此同时，根据 News Nation 的报道，川普总统的第一次总统行程将是在下周前往洛杉矶视察火灾情况。视线转向佛罗里达州，波克县警长格雷迪贾德公布了一系列因为被拜登政府驱逐而在佛州犯下暴力罪的非法移民名单，并表示佛罗里达需要为其他州树立榜样，支持总统将这些犯罪分子驱逐出去，保护我们的人民。
And our top priority is the illegal immigrants in this country that are committing crime. So I want to give you just a quick snapshot of why our governor is saying Florida needs to set the example for the other states to support the president to get rid of these criminals who are victimizing our people. How about Edie Grandos? He's not only here illegally, he killed a 21-year-old. He was leaving the scene of a crash, no driver's license, in Homeland, Florida. Think about that for a minute. We had another instance where we arrested a guy 4 times for no driver's license, and ICE never deported him. Oh, that's minor. And then he ran over someone on a scooter and killed them. Had he been deported for violating the law, that person riding the scooter would be alive and well today. And then there's Elmer Kennel. He's 24. 2 people died, and a 18-year-old high school girl will be injured with issues forever because he was here illegally from Guatemala, caused a car crash, and 2 people died. This is a snapshot. We could give you hundreds. Dorito Casto. He was deported 2 times. He came back, he had a crash on 1792, DUI manslaughter, after he was already deported 2 times. How about Ernesto Morales, who's 32? His hit and run killed a 5-year-old little girl when he ran into the rear end of her car on Highway 60. How about Arnaldo Paz, who's 39? He murdered a 74-year-old lady in Polk City. None of these people should have been here to have created these crashes and murdered these people. How about Juan Orgozo? He's 36, attempted murder. He did a home invasion and told the lady, shut up or I'll kill you. She was there. As the governor said, they didn't care that it was that someone was there. They wanted to go in and steal stuff. And then there's the frost-proof murder by Miguel Cazame, who's 47. Now, folks, that should shock your conscience. But how about this? We have one of our victims here today. Professional criminals out of Venezuela. They were arrested in New York, in the city, in the state, and not held accountable. They ended up here. They're very good, very experienced, very professional criminals. They would go to restaurants, and they focused on our Asian residents and business people. They would photograph the restaurant inside and out. They would identify the owners. They would stalk them back and forth to their homes. And when they patterned them, then they would break into their homes and steal and steal and steal. Of the 9 cases we charged these folks with initially, 7 of them were our Asian American friends. They were here illegally. The Biden administration didn't care. We talked about that. Now we've got a governor who said, look, the people have voted and we want to get ahead. We want to set a state model. Our Senate and our House are the best in the nation, and they're led by professionals that I have the highest respect for. We have to come together and set the state model that supports the federal model so that we get the illegal criminals out of this country.
根据《纽约时报》的最新民调，87%的绝大多数美国人都支持驱逐有犯罪记录的非法移民，而63%的多数美国人则支持驱逐所有在过去4年内非法进入美国的移民。最后再来看科技亿万富翁终身民主党员马克平库斯的一段独白，他透露了他最终投票支持川普的红药丸时刻。
December of 23, and then, you know, won't bother you, but I had my red pill moment and I went a very different direction, which started off just questioning the Democrats, right? It's like the wall starts crumbling and then it comes down all at once. So for me, it really started early in 23. I started reading Pirate Wires and Mike Solana, and I thought he was a little crazy at first because he would write these articles. One he wrote was about how the Ukrainian soldiers had swastikas on their helmets, and the New York Times photographers would ask them to take the swastikas off for photos. And I said, that can't be right. That can't be true. And then 4 months later, it was in the New York Times, buried in the middle of the paper. And I kept seeing stories like that he would be early on. And so I just started feeling uncomfortable and queasy about what was going on with mainstream media. And then in May of last year of 24, I read some article that talked about Trump's speech in Charlottesville, and this has been well covered, but where he said there was good people on both sides, and the article said it was completely, you know, propaganda and not accurately reflecting what he said, that he denounced the Nazis a bunch of times in his speech. And so then I went and watched that video, and that was my red pill moment. I think it was for a lot of people, because it wasn't just the media spinning it or politicians spinning it. That was like one of the pillars of why you were supposed to hate Trump, was that speech. And then you see Biden say that's why he had to run a second time. And you see Obama you even see Biden bring it up again in the beginning of the DNC. And it's one of their pillars, and they clearly know that they're misrepresenting things. So for me, that was beyond uncomfortable. I was just like, okay, now I got to go back to first principles and look at the primary data and listen only to original speeches by people. And I just realized I couldn't trust mainstream media. So I started questioning the Democrats. As soon as I started questioning the Democrats, I started getting a lot of shame and anger and hatred. Oh, the other thing that happened that was part of this journey is that my chief of staff parted ways with me after 9 years in April of last year. And he was the main person protecting me from myself on Twitter. And he was the one who would say, stay in your lane. Nobody wants to hear what you think about politics or San Francisco or anything other than, your area of products and investing. And with him gone, I just started tweeting whatever I felt and thought. And sometimes I got it wrong or it was a little too emotional. But first of all, it was really fun. And then second of all, I found I got connected to this whole new audience of people who are these kind of techno-optimists. And that just brought me down this path that eventually I came out 2 days before the election publicly for Trump. And it was only because that's when I completely got there. And I was trying to just be completely honest and authentic with myself